everyone. I am Rochelle Sidivera, taking up Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in English. For today's video, I would like to share to you the short story entitled Scent of Apples. Beinvenido Santos is a part of a short collection of the same name published in 1978 by the University of Washington Press. Beinvenido Santos was a Filipino-American fiction, poetry, and non-fiction writer. He is born and raised in Tondo, Manila on March 22, 1911. He died in January 7, 1996. Beinvenido Santos. He first came to United States in 1941. He has lived intermittently here in the Philippines and writing in English about his experience. The character of the story. Mr. Beinvenido Santos, main character and writer of the story. Next, Celestino Fabia, a fellow Filipino who owns an apple farm. Next, Ruth Fabia and Roger Fabia. The setting of the story happened in Kalamazoo and it was on October. The main setting was in Fabia's place. Mr. Santos was there for a conference. In the forum, the audience wanted to know if there was much difference between American women and our women. The author tried the best he could, saying that he did not know how much about American women except that they look friendly and he could only speak with fogginess. While he was trying to explain his way, a man rose wanting to say something. He was a Filipino and he left the Philippines more than 20 years ago. He was Mr. Celestino Fabia, just a Filipino farmer as he called himself. He wanted to know if Filipino women were the same like they were 20 years ago. Author weighed his answer carefully as he does not want to lie and to make Fabia unhappy with his answers. So he wanted Fabia to tell what are Filipino women like 20 years ago. Fabia stood up to answer. 20 years ago, our women were nice, modest, they wore their hair long, they dressed proper and went for no monkey business. They were natural, they went to church regularly, and they were faithful. And the author knew what he was going to say that will interest Fabia to know. Our women have changed, but the change has been on the outside only. He pointed to his heart and told, inside here, they are the same as they were 20 years ago. God-fearing, faithful, modest, and nice. After the conference, Mr. Fabia introduced himself and talked about his farm and family and invited Mr. Santos to his place. They arrived at Mr. Fabia's place and Mr. Santos met the wife and son of Mr. Fabia. As soon as they came in, Mr. Santos was aware by the scent of apples. Ruth was busy preparing to cater Mr. Santos with so much food. Afterwards, Mr. Santos noticed an old picture frame which is a faded figure of a woman in Philippine dress. Mr. Fabia took Mr. Santos around the farm which contained apple trees that stood bare against a glowing western sky. Fabia took Santos back to the hotel before nightfall and they bid their goodbyes. The exposition of this story opened with a brief introduction of where the author was. The author, Mr. Santos, was asked to speak before an audience. He met Celestino Fabia the night Mr. Santos left his hotel. Next is rising action. In the course of Mr. Santos' discussion, Miss asked how Filipino women were different from the stereotype he was familiar with. After lecture, Mr. Fabia told Mr. Santos about his farm and his family and invited over his house. Next is the climax. They finally arrive in the farm and the fragrance of apples diffusing all over the places. Next is the following action. Mr. Santos finally met the wife of Mr. Fabia and son Roger. They invited Mr. Santos to their humble home and catered him food. The author found a picture of an anonymous Filipino wearing a traditional costume. Then last is the diploma. He bade a farewell to this family and Mr. Fabia took him back to the hotel. He hoped to send news to his family when he got back to the Philippines. But Mr. Fabia refused, saying that they might have already forgotten him. Next is the point of view of this story. Filipino immigrants to U.S. who tells trapped between culture and countries. When lecturing about his country in Michigan during World War II, he is hard-pressed to know how to summarize the difference between his culture and American culture. So these are the symbolism and figurative language of this story. We have a three identified symbolic meaning of scent of apples, which is exile, loneliness, and isolation. Next is the message or lesson of the story. Scent of Apples is all about how first-generation immigration experience a sense of loss and seeks connection to their past life, even if they had created a lie for them in a new world. So that's all. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.